Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. Now for today's video, I'm going to share two scary Hmong stories that come from Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Now I've had these two stories in my back catalog for a while now, and just the other day when I was looking through some of my old stories, I found them and I forgot that I didn't make a video with these two. So here you go. Thank you to the viewers who submitted these stories, and if you would like to see your stories featured on this channel, please send them to the email listed in the description below. And before we get started, remember to leave a like and subscribe, and without further ado, enjoy the show. This took place at my old house in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. It was one of those normal houses where if you drove past it, you wouldn't think anything was wrong with it at all. It looked like any other family home. The layout matters a little bit for this story because a lot of the things that happened were connected to where the rooms were. When you walked through the front door, the living room was right there. The living room was wide and open, and the front window looked out toward the street. On the right side of the living room was a short hallway that led to two bedrooms and a bathroom. One bedroom belonged to my parents, and the other was where my siblings and I slept. The kitchen was behind the living room, and next to the kitchen was a door that went down to the basement. The basement was unfinished on one side and kind of finished on the other. The finished side had old carpet and a couch that the landlord left behind. The unfinished side had the laundry area, some shelves, and the water heater. There was one small window down there, but it was one of those basement windows where you could barely see anything outside. Even during the day, the basement felt darker than it should have. The first strange thing that I remember had to do with a black cat. It was one night when I woke up to a cat crying outside the window. At first I thought it was just a regular cat fight. You know how cats sound when they fight or when they are in heat? It can sound like someone crying or someone screaming far away. I opened my eyes and just listened. The sound was coming from the front of the house, near the living room window. It wasn't a normal meow though. It was long and slow, almost like it was crying on purpose. This cat didn't cry every night, but it happened enough times that my siblings and I started to notice it. It always happened late at night, after everyone had gone to sleep. Sometimes it would be outside the living room window. Other times it would sound like it was outside the bedroom window, and sometimes it sounded like it was right underneath the window. Like if I had looked through the blinds, its face would be there looking into the bedroom. I really never wanted to look. My younger sister did it once. She told me that the cat was sitting on the walkway in front of the house, just staring up at the window. She said that it didn't move even when she tapped on the glass. She could see its eyes reflecting from the streetlight, but the body was so black that it looked like a hole in the yard. I thought that she was just messing with me, but honestly, I kind of believed her. One night, my dad finally got tired of it. The cat was crying so loud that even he woke up, and my dad was the type that could sleep through almost anything. He opened the front door fast, like he was trying to catch it by surprise. As soon as the door opened, the crying stopped. He stepped outside in his sandals and looked around the front yard. He didn't see anything. He didn't see the cat, he didn't see any movement, and he didn't even hear any sounds. Another thing that happened in that house was that our stuff would disappear and then come back. I know that this kind of happens in every house. People might take things and forget to put them back, things like keys and remotes, but it felt a little different in our house because it happened with things that we had just used. My mom told me how one time she was cooking in the kitchen and she put the scissors on the counter after opening one of those big bags of rice. She turned around to stir something on the stove, and when she turned back, the scissors were gone. We helped her look for them because she was getting mad, thinking that one of us kids took them. We checked the drawers, the tables, everywhere, but nothing. We couldn't find it. Later that night, after dinner, the scissors were back on the counter in the same exact spot she said that she had left them. My mom didn't say much. She just looked at them and asked who put this back. Nobody answered because, honestly, nobody touched them. Now, another thing about this house was that I also saw some ghosts or spirits. Not fully, but it looked kind of like those black shadows. It was one time I was walking from the hallway to the kitchen at night. I think I was getting water in the middle of the night and the living room light was off, but the kitchen light above the stove was on, so the house wasn't completely dark. As I passed the living room, I thought I saw something white near the front window. It was fast, like a person moving from the window toward the hallway, but only for a second. I stopped and I looked. I didn't see anything there. At first, I told myself that it was probably the reflection from a car passing outside, or maybe it was even my reflection. And that made sense because the front window faced the street. Cars would often pass and their headlights would shine through the blinds. But there was something about it that felt a little too off, and it felt like it was shaped like a person. I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to sound like I was scared. One time, my sister shared with me that she said she thought she saw someone standing by the hallway bathroom. She said that it looked like a lady in white, but she only saw the back of her. She thought it was our mom at first, but when she called out, the person walked into the hallway and disappeared. She checked my parents' room and my mom was asleep. I remember feeling goosebumps when she told me that because I didn't tell her what I saw that one time. My brother also said that he also saw that lady too. He was a little bit older than us, and you know how boys are, they tend to act like they're not scared. He was the kind of guy to laugh at those ghost stories and say that people were just imagining things. But I remember one morning, he came out of the bedroom looking kind of mad. My mom asked him what was wrong, and he said that he woke up in the middle of the night and said that he saw a woman standing near the closet. He told us that she had long black hair. He couldn't see her face because her hair was covering most of it, and it was dark. But he said that the shirt or dress she had on looked white. He thought it was my sister at first, so he told her to stop playing, and the figure didn't move. So he reached over to turn on the small lamp by the bed, and when the light came on, nothing was there. Now, another experience that I want to share was what happened during a family gathering. I still think about this one because it was one of the few times that a lot of us were there, and it wasn't just one person being sleepy or scared. A lot of the cousins came over and we were playing a bunch of games and just running around the house. We all stayed up pretty late. I remember that we had a PlayStation during that time and we were playing some video games on there. By then, most of us were already pretty tired, and my mom had gotten some blankets and pillows for us to put out into the living room where we can all sleep. That night, after playing for so long, we got tired and everybody went to bed. I remember I woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't move. I was lying on my back, which I usually don't do. I tend to sleep on my side. The room was dark, but I could see the shape of our entire living room. A lot of the cousins and my siblings were sleeping in the room, and I could hear some of them breathing and snoring. At first, I thought that my blanket was too heavy. Then I realized that I couldn't move at all, and I tried to turn my head, but I couldn't. Out of nowhere, I heard the cat. It was crying outside the window again. The sound was soft at first. It was kind of quiet, and then it just got louder. It sounded like it was right under the window. I remember thinking in my head how it was that close. I tried to call my brother's name, but no sound came out. I could only breathe fast through my nose. The cat cried again, and this time I thought I heard something else in the living room. It sounded like somebody was standing up from the floor, just like a kind of small shift in the carpet. I couldn't see anything, but I thought I felt someone by the living room closet. Then I heard what sounded like a woman whisper something. I couldn't understand what she was saying. It was too low, but I definitely knew that it was a woman's voice. At this point, I was kind of freaked out, and I was trying to move as best as I could. Eventually, I was able to break free, and I finally moved and everything lifted off of me. I sat up fast, and I looked around. Everybody was still asleep. The sound of the cat stopped crying, and after that, I really couldn't sleep. Everybody was just too loud anyways, and my older cousins were snoring away. Now, going back to the sleep paralysis, this didn't only happen to me. My sister also told me that she had sleep paralysis too. Hers was worse because she said she saw the woman at the foot of her bed. Not clearly, but enough to know that someone was there. She said that the woman was bent forward a little, like she was looking at her. She said that it was like 1 second the woman was at the foot of her bed, and the next second she was near her face. That really freaked out my sister, and she woke up crying. All of us woke up and we were wondering what's going on. My mom and dad came to the room and they tried to calm her down, and after that she told us about what had happened. My mom and dad started to take things a little bit more seriously after that. My mom put one of those red little triangles above the bedroom door. I don't know what was in it, but I know that it was something that my grandma told her to use. My mom didn't explain it to us. She only told us to not touch it. That seemed to help calm things a little bit, and we stopped having sleep paralysis. But I think that after hanging up that little red triangle, things just got a little worse. The reason why I say this is because we started to hear the sound of someone crying from the basement. Now, this is the part that I still don't really like to talk about. Even now, when I hear someone crying far away or muffled through a wall, I think about that basement. Next, I want to share some of my family's experiences with the crying. My dad told me that one time he came home late one night and he went to the kitchen to get some water. As he was drinking his water, he heard what sounded like a woman crying downstairs. At this point, he was a little freaked out because nobody should be in the basement. But, being the dad, he decided to be brave and check it out. My dad opened the basement door and the crying stopped right away. Nobody was down there, and after that, my dad said that he made it a habit to start closing the basement door before going to bed. One time, I also heard it too. It was one of those nights where I just woke up for no reason. The house was dark, and I could hear the refrigerator humming. I thought that I should use the bathroom, and maybe afterwards I could go back to sleep. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, I heard crying. It was kind of quiet, like someone trying to not cry too loud. I decided to go near the living room and listened. At first, I thought it was my mom. Maybe she was upset about something and sitting in the kitchen, but the sound was lower, like it was coming from below the floor, from the basement. I stood there for a little while, not moving. I wanted to go and wake up my parents, but I was scared that if I moved, whoever or whatever was crying would hear me. That sounded kind of dumb because the basement door was closed, but that's how scared I was. Then the crying changed. It sounded like a woman at first, but then it began to sound like the cat. Remember how earlier in the story I mentioned this black cat that would cry outside of our window every night? Well, the sound of the crying woman became this sound of the crying cat. I immediately ran back to the bedroom and got under the blanket. The next morning, I asked my parents if they heard the crying last night. My mom looked at me for a second and asked why I had heard it. I told her that I heard it in the basement, and she didn't say anything. She just told me to not go down there at night. My older brother also heard it too, but he reacted differently. He got really mad. He said that if it was a neighbor or an animal, then we need to find out. One night, when the crying started again, he grabbed a flashlight and said that he was gonna check. My dad stopped him. He told him no and said that he couldn't go down there. He said that if it was a person, then we will call somebody. But in the case that it wasn't a person and it was something else, then my brother should not go down there. That was the first time my dad really kind of talked like that. Usually he tried to explain things normally, but that night he did not. The crying didn't happen every night. Sometimes the weeks would pass without anything, and then randomly, at 1 or 2 in the morning, one of us would wake up and hear it again. Sometimes it sounded like it was coming from the laundry side, and sometimes it was like it was right under the living room. The last thing I want to say about the house is that I never saw the woman clearly. None of us did. It was always a glimpse. It was a white shape near the window or long hair near the closet, but we never really saw what the woman looked like. To this day, I don't know who she was, and I don't know if the black cat had anything to do with her. But now, after all these years, I like to believe that the black cat and the woman were the same thing. That's why that night, when I heard the woman crying and it turned into the sound of the cat crying, I figure that maybe the cat that came outside was the spirit of the woman. My family and I eventually moved out. I think that house is still out there, somewhere in Brooklyn Park. I don't know who lives there now, and I hope it's not another Hmong family, but now we don't have to worry about it. Eventually, all of us got older, and we all moved out of my parents' house, and now that we get back together, sometimes we still talk about that haunted house in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Hello, I have some stories that I want to share. After listening to your videos, I started to remember some of the experiences that me and my family had when we lived at this house. I also want to say that I'm not the kind of person that blamed everything and every sound on ghosts or the supernatural. Because of this, that's why for a long time, I didn't think that our house was haunted. The first things that happened were just annoying. The doors would close by themselves. They didn't slam, they would just kind of close quietly or click shut, even when nobody was near them. Our bathroom door did it the most. You would leave it open, go to the kitchen, and when you came back, the door would be closed. At first, we thought that the floor was uneven or that there was a draft, and we even checked the hinges and said that the door probably just leaned that way. So we ignored it. But then the other doors started to do it too. The bedroom door would open a few inches after being fully closed. The basement door would be cracked open in the morning, even though my mom always closed it before bed. These experiences weren't scary in the beginning. It was just like one of those things where someone would say, "Who left this open?" And everybody would say, "Not me," and then we would move on. Now, another thing about this house was that the lights were the same way. The lights would be on even when we knew that we turned them off. Mostly the kitchen light and the hallway light. One day, we left for a family event. I think it was a gathering or a celebration, and I was the one who was the last one out of the house. My mom yelled from the car for me to turn everything off, so I turned off the kitchen light, checked the living room, locked the doors, and left. When we came back later home that night, the kitchen light was on. My dad checked the back door and the windows, and everything was locked, nothing was missing, and he said that maybe we just forgot. I know that I didn't do that. I remember turning off the lights. Another time, my mom came home from work during the day and thought that someone was in the house because the hallway light was on and she could hear movement upstairs. She called out, but nobody answered. She went outside and waited in the driveway until my dad came home. He checked the house. Nothing was there. And that's when my mom started to say that the house had a bad feeling. Here's another thing about the house. One weird thing about that house was that we would hear the furniture moving. I guess that was the easiest way that I could describe it. It sounded like chairs being dragged across the floor or a table being pushed. Sometimes it happened upstairs when we were downstairs, and sometimes it happened downstairs when everybody else was upstairs. The weird thing was that whenever we checked, everything would be in place. Either that or a few things would just be slightly shifted. Now, the next part that I'm going to share is one of my experiences hearing the sounds. I think I remember I was in my room doing homework. It wasn't late. It was probably around 7 or 8 p.m. My parents were in the living room and my siblings were downstairs watching TV. I heard a scraping sound from the kitchen, like someone pulling a chair back from the table. I thought it was my mom getting up, so I didn't care. Then I heard it again. This time, a little longer, like the chair was being dragged slowly. I went to the kitchen and I thought that it was my family messing with me, but nobody was there. All the chairs were pushed in. My parents were still in the living room and my mom asked why I came out. I told her that I thought I heard the sound of a chair. She said that she didn't hear anything, and my dad said that he also didn't hear anything either. I just kind of was standing there, a little confused. After that, I went to my bedroom and didn't think anything of it. Now, the chair sounds and just the sound of furniture moving was pretty normal in that house. My family and I, we just learned to live with it. You could be watching TV and hear something scrape across the kitchen floor, and everybody would just kind of ignore it and go on and do their own thing. Everybody would hear it though. If you were to ask people, they would say, yeah, they heard it as well. Whenever we would check though, nothing seemed to have been moved. The table sound though was a little heavier. That one scared me the most because our dining table was not light. It was one of those older wooden tables. It was pretty heavy. It needed at least 4 people to carry it. If it moved, then you would know. One afternoon, my little brother and I were in our rooms playing video games. Everyone else was gone, and from the kitchen, we heard a heavy dragging sound. It sounded exactly like a table being pushed across the kitchen. At first, we just ignored it, and we kept playing our video game. But then the sound started again. It was slow and heavy. My brother looked at me, and at this point we were kind of annoyed. He asked if someone had come home, and I said that maybe, but at this point we already knew what it was. We were so used to living in this house and hearing these weird sounds. I decided to go to the hallway and yell out and call if my parents were home, but nobody answered. And then, I kid you not, the kitchen light turned on. I saw the light change from where I was standing, and the room was getting brighter. I ran back to my bedroom with my brother, and we locked ourselves inside. We just waited in the bedroom until my family came back home. I know that sounds embarrassing, but that's what happened. We thought that maybe someone had broken in the house, so we just hid in the room and waited, but we didn't hear anything after. When my mom came home, she was mad at first because we were just sitting in our rooms, but then we told her about what had happened. She checked the kitchen and the table was in the same place. The chairs were pushed in and the kitchen light was on. Now, the scariest part about that house though was not the doors or the lights or even the furniture sounds. To me, it was the shadows. At first, I only saw them from the corner of my eye. It would happen once in a while, I would walk past the hallway and think that someone was standing in the bedroom, or I would look toward the basement and see a dark shape move near the bottom of the stairs. It was always quick, and just enough that made you look again. I told myself that it was normal, that everyone sees things from the corner of their eyes, especially in a dark house. I remember one time, my sister started to refuse to sleep alone. She told us that there was someone in the corner of her room every night. My parents thought that she was just scared because she was young, and they let her sleep with my parents for a few nights. Then they kicked her out and told her she had to go sleep in her own bed. The next morning, she said that she saw the same person still standing there. She described it as a tall shadow standing in the corner near her dresser. It didn't have eyes or a face. It was just a little darker than the rest of the room. She said that it would stand there until she hid under the blanket, and when she looked again, it was gone. I didn't believe her until I saw one myself. I woke up one night because I felt like someone was in my room. I didn't hear it, but I felt it. It's kind of hard to explain. But anyways, the room was dark and my eyes were adjusted enough to see the furniture around my room. I could see the dresser, the closet, and the chairs and stuff. I looked toward the corner by my closet. There was a person standing there. At least, that's what my mind thought at first. It was tall and dark and shaped like a person, but it did not move like a person. It was just standing there, facing my bed. I could not see its clothes or a face. It looked like a shadow that had just become thick enough to stand on its own. I just sat there, laid there in my bed. I didn't yell and I couldn't jump up. I just stared at it because I was trying to understand what I was seeing. I kept telling myself that it was just a jacket hanging on the rack or the closet door or a pile of clothes, but honestly, I knew where everything in my room was. There was nothing in that corner tall enough to make that shape. The longer I looked, the more my body reacted. My heart started beating hard. My arms felt numb, and I got goosebumps and chills all across my body. I wanted to look away, but I was scared that if I looked away, the thing would move closer. Eventually, I got brave enough, so I grabbed one of my pillows and I tossed it into that corner. It hit whatever it was, but it kind of just went through it and hit the wall behind it. And then the thing started to fade away. It just became a part of the dark until I couldn't tell where it was anymore. I basically slept with the lights on all the way until morning. After that, I believed my little sister. For a while, I was pretty afraid to sleep at night. I had to sleep with a nightlight just so I wouldn't see that shadow again. It helped a little, but not completely. The last shadow experience I will share happened to my mom. She didn't tell us until many years later. She said that one night, she woke up because she heard chairs moving in the kitchen again. So she got up and opened her bedroom door. The hallway light was already on. She looked toward the kitchen and saw a dark figure standing beside the dining room table. She said it was tall, but not clear. The light was on, so it should have not looked like a shadow, but it did. It stood there for a second, and then it moved toward the living room without making a sound. My mom said that she closed the bedroom door and woke my dad up. She did not go check and she didn't yell. She just stayed in the room with my dad until morning. That was some of the experiences we had with the shadow in that house. Now, I'm not sure what it could have been, because when we first moved into that house, everything was fine. There was no scary experiences, no weird sounds or anything like that, and not even the shadows that we kept seeing. But it was like Out of nowhere, all these events and spooky experiences just started to happen. My family and I, we still practice the old religion, so my parents would sweep the house with a peach branch, or they would also burn pepper throughout the house, hoping to get rid of whatever the spirit and entities were. We also had red strings tied on us. We had all sorts of magical objects that were supposed to ward away evil spirits. And I won't lie, those things helped us for a time being. The noises would stop and we would stop seeing the shadow. But eventually, things came back to normal. The noises would begin again, the doors would open and close, and the lights would turn on and off, and we would eventually see the shadow again. We also had a bunch of ceremonies that were done by shamans to bless the house, but it seemed like no matter what we did, it would always come back. Now, another thing that I want to share that I remember during this time was that my parents didn't really get along with each other. They always seemed to be fighting every single day and always argued over petty little things. During this time, we were also very poor, and it seemed like we were never able to hold on to any cash. I remember one time, my dad was telling my mom that it was maybe this house that was the reason why we were so poor and why our family never got along with each other. Not only was the house haunted and already had spirits living in it, but perhaps it was like bad luck or a curse to us. My mom would always brush it off and they would always fight again, but eventually they started to believe in what my dad said, and so we were able to move out of the house and live with my grandparents for a while until we found a new home. Surprisingly, nothing happened or followed us to my grandparents' house. I think it's because of how OGs always say how elders have more protective power over spiritual forces. And on top of that, my grandparents also knew a little bit of magic and protective spells to keep away the spirits. I remember one time when my little sister was still a little baby, she started to cry out of nowhere. She kept crying and would not stop crying. So my grandma grabbed some incense and lit it up and went outside. She lit it up with a lighter and started to chant a protective spell. She came back inside, held my sister, and blew out 3 breaths of air and then patted her head. After that, my sister started to calm down and she stopped crying. But yeah, that was my story from the time we lived at that haunted house, and I'm glad that we don't live there anymore. And those are the stories from the Brooklyn Park, Minnesota area. Now, I personally never really been to that area before, at least I don't think I have, but I know there's a lot of Hmong families that live there, and there's probably a lot of haunted houses there, haunted Hmong houses. Now, going to the second story toward the end, when the writer was talking about their grandma doing that little magical spell, that also flashed me back to the time when I was little. I was probably like 6 years old, maybe 7 years old, and my younger brother was a baby during this time. And I remember it was just like how the writer explained it, how their siblings just started crying, and my little brother was just crying out of nowhere, and no matter what we did, he would just not stop crying. It was me and my grandma and my little brother at home, just the 3 of us in the middle of the night. I think my parents and my grandpa must have gone to a funeral or something, and so my grandma volunteered to stay home to watch the 2 of us. And my little brother was just crying and crying all night long and would not stop crying. And during that time, that's when my grandma had like a light bulb moment. And it felt like she kind of knew what was going on. And I understood what she was saying because your boy can speak Hmong and understand Hmong. So my grandma was telling me how like there was a natepada that was bothering him. And so my grandma grabbed some incense just like the writer wrote. And I don't remember if she grabbed joss paper, but she grabbed some things. And she went to the back porch and she opened the glass sliding door and she started doing, like little magical prayer out there. And my little brother was crying the whole time. He was just sitting there and he just would not listen to anybody. And he was crying to the point where it seemed like something really was bothering him. That's why my grandma kind of understood what was going on. It was like something invisible was like just bothering him and irritating him. And he was just scared. He kept crying. And my grandma was out on the porch and she was doing her thing. And she comes back inside. Kid you not, like 5 minutes pass and my little brother calms down. And he's willing to eat the bottle and he's willing to just play. He's all normal again. So that was pretty weird. I don't know what she did, but I'll have to ask her what that protective spell is, so that way I can keep it for the future. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the video in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, remember to leave a like and subscribe. I really need subscribers, so that way I can get those adult beverages to drink. And YouTube's telling me that you might enjoy this video on screen, so click on it. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And I will see you all in the next video. Thank you for watching.